let's pick up on oil prices. Of course, this is a key point between the Kingdom and the US. Donald Trump wants lower oil prices, and that was, part of his sort of election mandate to a degree. The Kingdom needs to finance what is this very ambitious vision 2030, and even though it says it's not dependent on oil at any single price, clearly a higher oil price is better. How does Washington and Riyadh square what seems to be a quite sort of contentious curve there and ensure that the relationship between the two is mutually beneficial and in both countries' national interests?
Well, look, oil is the lifeblood of Saudi Arabia. So that comes first. And the Kingdom has to make sure that it gets as good a price for its major commodity as possible. Now, the Kingdom has always taken an approach that it wants stable oil prices, it doesn't want extra high oil prices, and it has always worked to temper very high oil prices. It so happens that at this period of time, the Kingdom is concerned about cheating in OPEC, and hence is increasing production to grab back market share from some of the cheaters. And that has brought the price of oil down, which meets the objectives of the Trump administration also. So there is happily a meeting, if you want, of interests. But ultimately, the Kingdom has to look at its oil strategy as a fundamental economic underpinning of what it does. And that is the priority.
As it diversifies its economy away from a reliance on hydrocarbons.
It is working to diversify, but still it is heavily reliant on oil.
Let's talk about the economics of Saudi Arabia right now more broadly. How far have they come, and what do they still need to overcome? I mean, this is a place transformed since Donald Trump's last visit here in 2017. This is an economy transformed as well as a society transformed. But there's still an awful lot of work to go 4 or 5 years out from that very ambitious sort of 2030 vision, which was in sort of everybody's crosshairs, as it were.
Well, President Trump came in 2017 at the very early stages of a new era, really, which was King Salman coming to the throne and Prince Mohammed bin Salman coming to the leadership of the government, really. And since then, which is nearly a decade, about 9 years or 8 years since that began, the Kingdom has gone through, first of all, a social and cultural revolution. Women have been empowered in a way unimaginable 10 years ago. And you can see that just by walking around and see today that Saudi Arabia is very much a normal country by international standards in the way that women integrate into public life, into the workforce, and into all aspects, including the military. Women are joining the military now. So on top of that, there's been a process of economic restructuring. First of all, there was trying to reduce waste as a result of oil, over-reliance on oil. So subsidies, which were utility subsidies, or water subsidies, or energy subsidies, have been reduced dramatically. So that there's less wastage, there's less dependency on the government budget to maintain these subsidies, while at the same time the government has gone out and put a sort of social security net for the more vulnerable elements of society. So there is a program out there for the more vulnerable elements of society to get aid on a continuous basis. Now, having said that, the government has also really initiated, if you want, as a venture capitalist, a number of major projects across the Kingdom. Industry, entertainment, tourism, and, in a way, it's like a venture capitalist putting chips on many numbers.
There are big bets being made.
There are big bets being made, but you don't need all of them to work. You need a few of them to work. And once you get a feel of what those are working, you'll be able then to double down on those bets.
This project will only work, or certainly will only be as successful as this country hopes it will be, with its Saudi-first policy, unashamedly, unapologetically, just like the UAE has a sort of UAE-first policy. These economic sort of ambitious economic projects will only be successful if this region is successful. If we see the sort of de-escalation that is being sought by Riyadh and by the UAE and others, economic integration around this region. And if these projects can be successful, those I speak to in the region say that can cascade around the region. And this is a region fundamentally changed. As far as relationships are concerned,
very much
on the
so.
ground since 2017. Iran, for example.
Very much so. Today, the Iranian foreign minister was here a day or so ago to brief the Saudi foreign minister on the latest developments in talks with the United States.
Unimaginable back in 2015.
Unprecedented, really. So there's a level of communication and coordination with Iran that hasn't been there for a very, very long time.
Why does that matter?
It matters because Iran has been a major disruptor in the region. And the hope is, and obviously people will look to Iran's actions, not so much Iran's statements, but they will look to Iran's actions in the way that it manages its proxies, in the way that it deals with Yemen, for example. And the Iranians have promised to play a more positive role, and they have said that they want to start to look more internally at building up the human development index, if you want, of their people.
What do you make, finally, Ali, of Donald Trump's win, if you want to call it that, on a ceasefire with the Houthis? These talks ongoing, currently hosted by Oman between the US and Iran. The brokering of the freeing of this last hostage. Stephen Witkoff has been massively involved in trying to broker a more long-term ceasefire and a hostage deal for Gaza. It does certainly seem today as if the US is freezing Israel out of some of what it would otherwise or usually be discussing with Israel, and it's going it alone. These appear to be, at least on the surface, unilateral decisions by the United States. What do you make of Donald Trump's policy and efforts in this region at present as it tries to move beyond conflict?
Well, President Trump is a doer. And he has taken action to try and free up the Red Sea, and he has been quite vehement. Well, we'll see. But I mean, he has certainly inflicted a lot of pain on the Houthis for them to think twice about whether they want to continue this sort of strategy. That has sent a message to Iran, and we would all like to see Iran feel that they have a stake in the status quo, and they have a stake in an improved economic environment which they can benefit from. So I think the fact that he's given the Iranians a channel of communication, that he's working on a nuclear deal, that he's communicating with them even on things like the Houthis, are all very positive indicators. And we would just hope that the Iranians take advantage of that and come back into the fold, really, of nations that want to live together in peace and in economic cooperation rather than in conflict. This is at a time when Iranian influence, many would argue, around this region, and even Iranian officials that I've spoken to myself, know that its influence is on the wane. Hamas, Hezbollah destroyed in Lebanon, all but destroyed in Lebanon. Syria no longer its sort of backyard for destabilization around this region. The US ring fencing to a degree Houthi action in the Red Sea. I wonder what these other files, including Syria, mean for Saudi. Can you just finally explain how important it is and why it is that the Saudis will take or are taking such a critical role in, at least in principle, pushing for reconstruction and support for the Syrian regime? Absolutely. The kingdom is giving the new Syrian leadership the benefit of the doubt. It's been a huge development that the Assad regime went, and that Syria stopped being a playground for the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And I think based on that, and based on the attitude of the new Syrian government, which has been saying all the right things and showing that it wants to reintegrate back with the world. The kingdom has been pushing the US to remove sanctions, has been working with its Gulf partners also to help Syria financially, and hopes very much that the Trump administration will reduce, if not eliminate, the sanctions so that the Syrians can start to rebuild. It's really very, very important for regional stability to cross that red line.